Hello and welcome to Math with Mrs. Becker. Today in College Trig, we are going to finish up section 5.4, which looks at the sum and difference formulas. Now yesterday, when we looked at the sum and difference formulas, we used our unit circle. But guess what? We can do this for triangles as well. And to be honest, I almost like the triangle feel of it better. Let's just go ahead and do it and we can see what you think, okay? So if I want to find the exact value for the sine of angle U plus angle V, okay? They are going to give us a domain so that way we can figure out where the triangle should be within the coordinate plane. So angle U needs to go between 0 and pi over 2. So that means that angle U falls in quadrant 1. So you will draw your coordinate plane. The terminal side would be in quadrant 1. You use the x-axis to make your right triangle. This is angle U. The angle always goes next to the origin. And the sine, opposite over hypotenuse, is 4 over 5. So opposite is 4, hypotenuse is 5. I'll have to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the third side. So 4 squared plus we don't know squared equals 5 squared. 4 squared is 16. Our adjacent side we do not know, so I'm keeping that as b. 5 squared is 25. If I minus 16, I will have b squared equals 9. I take the square root of each side, so this could be positive or negative 3. You need to look at the location because I'm traveling to the right. This is a positive 3. So that is u. Now we need v. V falls from pi over 2 to pi. So if you visualize your unit circle, that is going to be in quadrant 2. Because remember, this is pi over 2 and this is pi. So the terminal side is in quadrant 2. This is angle V. The angle goes right next to the origin. The cosine, the adjacent over the hypotenuse, is negative 12 over 13. And remember, our hypotenuse is always positive. So that means the negative goes with the adjacent. So this will be negative 12, which makes sense because I'm going to the left. The hypotenuse is 13. I need to find the opposite. So I'll do the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus negative 12 squared equals 13 squared. A squared plus negative 12 squared. Negative 12 times negative 12 is 144. 13 squared, 169. If I minus 144, a squared equals 169 minus 144 is 25. I take the square root of each side, so a could be a positive or negative 5. So we look at the location. The location of the opposite, it's above the x-axis, so this is a 5. Okay, now we go ahead and use the formulas and watch how cool this is. So I have a sine and its addition. So this is the formula. When they say a, I'm using u. When they say b, I'm using v. So it's the sine of a, which is u, times the cosine of b, which is v, plus the cosine of a, which is u, times the sine of b, which is v. Okay, so I use the formula. Now I can go to the triangles. If I look at u, the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so this is 4/5. The cosine of v, so I go to v. Cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, so negative 12 over 13. Plus the cosine of u, so I go to u. Adjacent over hypotenuse, that's 3/5. The sine of v, the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so that's 5 over 13. You multiply before you add. Top times top, so that's negative 48. Bottom times bottom, 5 times 13 is 65. Plus, top times top, 3 times 5 is 15. Over bottom times bottom, 5 times 13 is 65. I have a common denominator, it's 65. Negative 48 plus 15 is negative 33. So that is the sine of angle U plus angle V. Let's do another one. This time it's a cosine and it's subtraction. Again, we have to figure out where to draw the triangles. So I'm looking at angle V and angle U. So I'm going to start off, just because V is first, I'm going to go ahead and start off with V right away. So V is in between pi over 2 and pi. So again, we're looking at quadrant 2. This is V right next to the origin. The cosine of V, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. It's -3 over 5. The hypotenuse will always have a positive value, so the -3 goes with the adjacent. To find the opposite, I need to use the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus we don't know squared equals 5 squared. So this is 9 plus b squared equals 25. If I minus 9, b squared equals 16. If I take the square root, I could have a positive or a -4. This side is up above the x-axis, so it's a +4. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at u. So again, I'm going from pi over 2 to pi. So this triangle will also be in the second quadrant. This is angle U. U has a sine opposite over hypotenuse of 5 over 13. Now I need to find the adjacent. So 5 squared plus we don't know squared equals 13 squared. 5 squared is 25 plus we don't know squared equals 169. If I minus 25, 169 minus 25 is 144. If I take the square root of each side, b could be a positive or a -12. Because I'm going to the left, the adjacent would be a -12. Now it's time to go ahead and look at the formula. It's a cosine and I am subtracting. So I'm using this formula right here, okay? So I have the cosine, whenever they say A, it's V. Whenever they say B, it's U. So I have the cosine of V times the cosine of U. Plus, I have the sine of V times the sine of U. Now I go to the triangles to do this. I look at angle V. I want the cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. So -3 over 5. Now I go to U, the cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. So -12 over 13. Plus, back to angle V, the sine, opposite over hypotenuse. So that's 4/5. Go to U, the sine, opposite over hypotenuse. So it's 5 over 13. Top times top. Negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 12 is 36. Bottom times bottom. 5 times 13 is 65. Plus, top times top. 4 times 5 is 20. Bottom times bottom. 5 times 13 is 65. So when I go ahead and add these, I have 56 over 65. Last question. Okay, so if I go ahead and look at the last one, we are going to be dealing with a tangent. So remember, a tangent's a little bit trickier, but not so bad when you're doing triangles. So I'm looking at a tangent, I'm adding. It tells me both U and V are in quadrant 3. So I'm going to start, U is A, so I'm going to go ahead and do U first. So there is a triangle in quadrant 3. They also told me that V is going to be in quadrant 3. U, the sine, the opposite over the hypotenuse is -8 over 17. The 8 is negative because I'm going down. 17 is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always positive, so I need to find the adjacent. So -8 squared plus we don't know squared equals 17 squared. -8 squared is 64. We don't know the adjacent. 17 squared is 289. If I minus 64, b squared equals 225. When you take the square root of 225 is 15. It can be positive or negative. Because I'm going to the left, this is going to be a -15. So I'm ready with angle U. Now I need to go with angle V. What I know about angle V is the adjacent over the hypotenuse gets me -4 over 5. Now I need to find the opposite. Negative 4 squared plus we don't know squared equals 5 squared. So this is 16 plus b squared equals 25. If I minus 16, this is 9. If I take the square root of each side, the square root of 9 is 3. It can be positive or negative. Because it's going downwards, this is going to be a negative 3. So now what I have to do is follow the formula. It is tangent and adding. So I have the tangent of A. Remember, A is the first thing that they mentioned. So tangent of U plus the tangent of B, which in our case is V, over 1 minus tangent of A, so that's U, times tangent of B, and in our case, that is a V. So check this out. This is way better than what we looked at yesterday with the unit circle. Tangent of U. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I have 8 over 15, because negative will cancel a negative, plus V, opposite over adjacent. I have 3/4 over 1 minus. Now you take the two tangents and you multiply them together. So 8 over 15 times 3/4. What I need to do, though, is get a common denominator. Well, my common denominator, I could easily just do 60 by multiplying each fraction by the other fraction's denominator. So here I'd have 32 over 60 plus 3 times 15 is 45 over 60. So if I take 32 plus 45, that is 77 over 60. So that's the numerator. Now on the bottom, it's 1 minus top times top, bottom times bottom. 8 times 3 is 24. 15 times 4 is 60. Well, I need to make a common denominator. So 1 can become 60 over 60 because 60 over 60 he still has a value of 1. Now I have my common denominator. If I take 60 minus 24, this is 35. So the bottom is 35 over 60. You cannot divide fractions. So I have the top, 77 over 60. Change divide to multiply. Do the reciprocal of the bottom and I get 60 over 35. This would cross cancel. The tangent has a value of 77 over 35. We have just completed section 5.4. Your assignment is to complete a worksheet. I hope you guys enjoyed learning all about the sum and difference formulas, and I look forward to talking to you soon.